So, guys, super exciting. Today we are with Pabilicious and we are continuing our discussions on common tender application mistakes. That's what we are doing. This is the Entrepreneurs Chat. We're a group of entrepreneurs meeting every weekday between 8 and 9 to talk about different aspects of business, different aspects of entrepreneurship. So, if this is your first time here, thank you for joining. Pabi, how are you?
I'm okay, and yourself?
Awesome, awesome. Introduce yourself to the people here. Maybe we're not there last time, so that we can just know where you were, who we're talking to. You don't have to tell us where you work and all these things. Because there's some people who contact you here. But anyway, you can just tell us about yourself and the work you do.
Okay, hi guys, it's Babilicious. Where do I start? Oh, by the way, I'm a supply chain practitioner for more than heading towards 20 years, I think. Yeah, working in supply chain. I've got honors in supply chain and I'm doing MBA this year. I have been working in supply chain in parastatal and also in government most of the time, mostly in the tendering section, but I do have experience in other areas within supply chain. So anything from demand up until the final stage, that's me. So the reason I'm here is to share a little bit of some mistakes, mostly are common that I've seen during this process, and they happen during the normal purchasing on a purchase order, as well as on the tendering, which is 80-20 and 90-10 principle that we normally work in. So I was previously invited by Harry and the guys around there, and you. By the way, I must first say thank you so much for those comments that I got privately. And some of the people were requesting numbers and all that. I haven't shared any number, but I just want to push this first, and Henry will share how it works in terms of that, because the number that I gave him is not the one that I'm using, but we can discuss if there are people who wish to have a further discussion regarding this. Okay,
Okay.
and as a recap, if I may, I only manage. Okay, all right.
No, I just wanted to say, so you are
You
part
lead me
of.
on this because I'm trying to cover everything, and I know
No,
I can
it's
be a
fine.
bit.
I'll leave you. I just wanted to say, so you are part of tender evaluations, so you really understand the space well. So it's fine. I just wanted to put it in layman
Yeah, that
terms.
one.
I wanted to put it in layman
All right.
terms, but it's fine. You can continue.
Good. All right. Oh, okay. When I came in, the last time I said I was going to talk about the 18 points, but they are not limited to. It's just one of the 18 key ones that I've seen. But out of the 18, two of them are just I view them as the advantages in order to eliminate those 16 that are too much. If you can look at those two, you might be able to avoid those 16. So I was only able to do the 5 points, of which I'm going to do a recap just now. One of them was about the advertisement of a tender, where we spoke about some of the documentations that needs to be there, like when they advertise, they attach them, such as the standard bidding document, normally known as the SBDs, and the TOR, which is terms of reference or specification on the tender, that gives you more information on that. So my emphasis on that was that people need to pay attention. Don't just grab an advert and run with it and say, yay, there is this tender, this department and all that. Then I can, put in my tender. You need to pay attention, read the details, get to understand, because a lot of information gets shared there. And another recap, the second one, it was the TOR, which is the terms of reference or specification. That one, some of the mistakes as a recap, most people don't read, they don't read to understand, and also do a self-evaluation of yourself to say, this type of goods, services, works that is required on that, do I have the knowledge or not? So we deal with a lot of jack of all trades. Nothing wrong in doing a lot of things, but you need to have a focus so that you are able to can target the right ones that are always winnable for you. We are not stopping you to put everything from stationery to tractor delivery and all that, but there are some implications because that's where you fail. And then the third one that I spoke of, it was the briefing session. That's where most information gets shared in that session. That is why I said when you see an advert, read it through, understand the TOR so that when you go to the briefing session, that's your opportunity to ask one of those questions that you were unsure of while you were reading it alone. You need to use that opportunity because sometimes you come across people who are disruptive, asking questions in a way that they want you to help them to write the spec, and they're doing it the wrong way. Or some they come with aggressive attitude. We deal with a lot of people, but some of us we are like calm, you know. You allow the process, people ask and you ask question. But the key thing here I want to emphasize is that if there's a briefing session, please make sure that you check whether it's a briefing, the briefing is compulsory, non-compulsory, or it's one of those non-virtual ones. Remember with COVID, we had to implement the briefing sessions that we are doing them online. So sometimes you might need to be in your space, or at times it might be both, where they say it's compulsory as well as virtual. So you need to look at those things. But especially where they will say compulsory, just know that you are expected to sign a register because that forms part of the elimination factor. By saying so, I mean if you submit a proposal
Hey, I'm
and you were
Kayla,
not
your
in the
Mark AI voices
compulsory
for Revoicer.
briefing,
No, you can
if
continue.
you were not in the yeah, if you were not in the compulsory and whereas the tender was for compulsory briefing, it's an automatic disqualification. So be careful of that because in that way, your tender will not be entertained during the bid evaluation process because that is the first step to say, okay, we've got like 10 or 20 proposals. So let's check who are the people, are they corresponding with the register? If they come across that we've got your proposal, your name is not there, a verification is done because it's mostly cross-functional team. They verify and then realize that no, you were not there. They also verify as well with security, because there are those registers when you come to the institutions to drop stuff. So there are other checks and balances that happens to make sure when they come back to you and say, no, you were not there. So you can't come back and say, no, you are discriminating me. So they will have all the facts in place. So that is very crucial. And the other thing I spoke about, the post briefing session. We normally, people know them as the follow up and all that because after the briefing session, it might be that in that session you ask a certain question that is very crucial. Perhaps those who conduct the briefing session, they don't have the answers immediately. They might need to go back and consult and come back and give it to those guys who were at the session. For instance, if it's a compulsory, like I said, it's a controlled session whereby you leave your emails and all that. But if we come across a question that we see that this needs to be shared amongst all the bidders who were there, the prospective bidders who were there at the session, they then take your emails and then do a Q&A session, like a question and an answer, and share it to everyone so that you get the same information. In that way, we have an obligation to ensure that people get the same information. The whole process becomes fair, transparent to everyone, because those are the things that if the supply chain officials are not controlling it to the T, that's when you get people who have this assumption that no, they just put in a tender for somebody who was not there. And that is a controlled environment because that's where you need to make sure that your process is not compromised so that you shouldn't be found wanting or compromised. So we are very strict when it comes to that. And some people tend to take it very light. And then again, some other sessions, the post briefing sessions, if they are not shared to you via email, go back to that website as well, because if there's more information shared, it's always put as a new link within where you found those documentation. Because remember, remember, departments don't work the same. Yes, we're supposed to, but how we share information, it's not the same. Some they might just load it there and leave you. If you don't go there, you're not gonna see. So for as long as there's a tender, you've targeted that this one, I'm going to apply to the T up until the last process. Keep on checking. It's a project itself. You can't leave anything out. You keep checking and all that. And the last recap that I spoke of the last time, it was the debriefing session because there was, I think the guy's name was Tumi or Tumza. I could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but I
To me.
think it's Tumza.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to jump into the last part, which was the debriefing, which I said is one of the advantages. In this session, that's the part where all the unsuccessful bidders have an opportunity to call in the departments or organization to say, look, I see that I didn't get the tender. However, I would like to understand how. And how we look at it, it's more like a supply development. You need to understand and learn going forward as a service provider because you also need to grow, understand where you went wrong. It could be the pricing, or when you submit your proposal, it could be that you have all the requirements that are needed there. However, how you package, maybe you omitted to submit something, especially when it comes to the SBD forms. Those are standard bidding documents. As long as you go with government institution, those are the must that you need to include in that proposal as well. So make sure that you utilize that opportunity. It helps you to empower and then also to research, like I said, especially on the pricing, because some people they just thumb suck the prices. So you use your PS as well to also check in terms of how they are doing the pricing. A classical nice example is the National Treasury there, because they've got something called the RT account, normally called the transversal account. So they'll advertise a certain service and then they put the pricing of those service providers that they've appointed for a certain period of time. That's where some of the organization, if they fail to advertise on time, they can always jump into that transversal contract and pull out the service that they require, but they need to make sure that they follow the same SLA that has been signed and the pricing structure. So I think I'll come to that part later on if there's a follow up in terms of the transversal, how it works. But I wanted to share to say also check on that and see some of the pricing because at times they share some of the pricing, especially on the awarded. Uh, Again, on the e-tender, they tell you that maybe for supply of this service, it's this amount. When you do your own pricing, it gives you an idea so that you shouldn't throw your pricing outside because it will disadvantage you, especially if you have passed the functionality. Now you get to compete with others on pricing and then you're out because you just gave a unreasonable pricing. Yeah.
Mm.
So today I'm just finalizing the remaining ones, which is the proposal preparation. I don't know if you wanna ask me something because I know I said a lot. Or
No, I
should I
think it's
continue?
fine. And also, I think if the guys who have got any questions can even type their questions as we go along so that we can be able to address these questions. Publishers will be able to address these questions. I'm seeing someone saying they're looking for catering tenders. I think I think there's, what's the website where they can look? It's eGov tenders or something, where they
Yeah,
can go.
it's the e-tender. That's where they advertise all the services. And then again, if that person requires something that is below within the 80/20 principle, below 500,000 and all that, remember it's based on what department has outlined in terms of their process because treasury will tell you that this is the threshold on the 80/20, but it's up to you how you put your own control measures. So then again, not necessarily that a person has to target for a tender. You can always have opportunities on quotation basis as well, but they need to register on CSD, Central Supplier Database. Once you're there, you will get random emails for requests for quotations. But yes, if this person is specifically looking for tenders as a target, then they need to check under the e-tender bulletin there. That's where they'll get the information. Tenders get advertised every week. Okay.
Awesome. Um, so there's a question here to me saying, can you jump into a bit more into the RT account? And Mamepe is asking, please explain the difference between the 80/20 and the 90/10.
Oh, okay. I think this will be covered in my next point, which is the okay, just hold on. I just want to see where I can address that because I'm trying to finish, honestly. I've realized the last time it took
Okay.
time. Okay. Can I just address it
But
right to
Delicious, we are a family. We are not going anywhere. We can invite you next week as well.
Ah,
So don't
okay.
worry. We are not in a rush,
Oh, oh,
So you know what? As long as if we can, obviously you feel that we have covered ground, but don't we you can always come back, So as long as people can really understand what's really going on.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
The 80 and the 90, on those parts there, it talks about mostly about the threshold in terms of how the tender will be advertised and evaluated on that. So the 80 part of it, when it comes to that, is the pricing. Remember, you have to provide the functionality and the pricing. And the 20 and the 10 part, that's the part of the BEE. And the BEE, I don't want to stress quite a lot if you know that there is this issue of the courts and the National Treasury and all that, where they are of the opinion that the BEE has to move. So right now, we're still in consultation in terms of giving the guides going forward when it comes to that. I don't know if people are aware about that, but basically on that 80 and 90, it's mostly on the functionality part, and then the 10 or the 20, that's when we talk about the BE principle when it comes to that, where they evaluate whether you're a woman, black owned, and all that. That's where you claim your points when it comes to the scoring when we do the evaluations of each tender.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And the RT account?
The RT account there. It's a transversal account. It's managed by the National Treasury. What they do is that they advertise more like all those government institutions for a certain services. Like for instance, the last time I engaged them, it was something to do with the travel uh, management services. For instance, if a service, a department is unable to advertise on time for whatever reason, because there are so many reasons not to advertise a tender. So what they do, they'll advertise a tender for travel services and then get service providers that will participate on there, and then they'll give the pricing methodology and all that. They will get evaluated as well and be awarded. And usually what they do, they will have an SLA that is in place with those pricing, and then they will put it on the website. For any government entity, including the SOEs, that needs to participate in that, they need to make sure that they apply. So the accounting officer or the CEO of the institution has to apply, give reasons why are they not going out on a tender and jumping into that. Because firstly, they need to have a procurement plan as an institution before they can go to treasury, so that they can see that whatever service that they need to jump into, it's there in the procurement plan. However, the reasons that they're providing that they have, or maybe they're not ready to advertise for whatever reason that they put in. If treasury agrees, they will sign to say yes, it's fine, you can participate. So once you get accepted, it means that department has to work with those SLA terms or an agreement terms that are already existing with National Treasury, including the pricing. The issue is to just temporarily eliminate that thing of advertising and then doing the evaluation yourself. You're just jumping into that. The only thing that you also have to be, abide by is that if, let's say, as an institution or a department, you wanted to have that contract for travel services, for instance, for 3 years, right? However, when you jump into the National Treasury's contract, it's already in the middle of the 3 year period. So it means you only got that half of 1 year, 6 months that is left there to jump in, advertise your own, and finalize. You cannot jump in there and expect that your first year towards the 3 year begins when you start. It allows you and gives you an opportunity to sort yourself while you're still doing that. The reason being is that they're trying to cap that issue of having the irregular and all that, where you procure stuff that is outside of the process. They ensure that there is something that is existing there. And at times, National Treasury as well, if somebody comes as a department and say, I'm looking for this type of a service, but I see you don't have it, but I know this institution or this department has got it. I need your assistant. They can then engage you on that, make sure that you get the same thing. But most of the time, they expect you with a transversal, which is the RT. RT normally is their reference that they put. RT, maybe 80 something, whatever. It has different numbers. It's more like the tender numbers on their own, how they control. So they always have their own stuff that are listed there. I spoke about the proposal preparation. Now we are moving, right?
Yes.
Um, when it comes to how the service providers are preparing those stuff, I think we also had, was it Dumza or who had a
It's
session
Tumi.
where he was
Yeah.
explaining, yes, yeah, it's more of the same thing. And I was happy to see that he had a template as a guide, and that helps quite a lot to say how you prepare. But like I said, from the point where I'm sitting, whether you made it as a messy, as you pack it, you send it, we have an obligation to evaluate, read all the documents, all of them. However, it's always nice to prepare them the way Tumza was like assisting, having the cover,
Mm.
the tender description, the number, who, your address, and all that, right?
Was at least you're
Yeah.
not angry
So
by
on
the
our
time you're evaluating. But it's fine.
no,
I know you're
no.
professionals. I'm
Anyway,
just putting it. You don't have to comment. I'm just putting it out there. I
yeah,
know
we are,
you're professionals, but it always helps to have
yeah.
something neat.
Of course. All right. Okay. Yeah, we on the preparation, you follow the instruction and normally the mandatory requirements, those SBDs and all that. Please make sure that you read through what is required, and also the scope of work. Understand it. If you don't understand, if there's a briefing, like I said, attend that briefing. If there's no briefing, make sure that you call them and do that in time, because sometimes you come across a person that will give you a call a day before it closes. You will
Mm.
not gonna get, because it might be that whatever you're asking, it needs more information. Like a supply chain official has to go and consult the project sponsor on the technical part of the question to say, I've got this question, how do we answer? And maybe it might not be something that they'll answer immediately. Then the next thing, that person, because they are late in their preparation, and they're the ones who always come back and say, no, I'm challenging this. Hey, the process was not fair, da 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 da, forgetting that you didn't ask on time. And it also reflects so bad to say this person is a bad planner when it comes to that, because had you read on time, the minute you get the advert and documents loaded, you would have picked it up there, or ask the question or do a post query after the briefing session. But nevertheless, those are our people, we have to teach them all the time. And then
Mm.
again, when it comes to the reference letter, this is very crucial. Some people at times they are not aware. At times, a person can type their own reference letter and submit it. We do due diligence within the evaluation process. We don't always take at face value. That is why on the TOR, some of the terms will say we may contact the people, your clients, to verify that. And when that
Mm.
happens, you come across a person, I don't know this person, or maybe they have not completed a project, especially in the construction industry, because Such references, all they want to see mostly is to see if you have a completion certificate which shows that this person has done this project of closing the loophole, I mean the potholes, let's say in Johannesburg area, from this period to that period, the value of the contract was this, and we're happy. Sometimes they call it the happy letter, kind of like. But if
Mm.
a person hasn't completed and there are issues and then he wants to use that is not a complete, because how do I then get comfort to say, indeed, you've done the job, whereas you haven't completed, you've done it blunder, and you want to continue to do that. So please make sure you send legitimate references on things that you have done. If they say they want 5 references, perhaps you only completed 3 projects, maybe the other 2 are still running. Give the 3 that you've completed, because the instruction said we want the 3 completed ones. Although you might reflect that I still have the 2 running, but when evaluation is done, actually, they calculate, they check the ones that are completed. So there are those chances says, no, I gave you 5. I show you the other 2 are still running. It doesn't work like that.
Mm.
Instructions are very important to follow and comply as such. And then again, there are situations where people submitting documents, copy of a certified copy. And I was saying, I think because you are in the legal space, you might know it much better. Where somebody, let's say they say submit your ID and it should be certified. You come across somebody that will make a copy of a certified copy. We do check those things like thorough when it comes
Mm.
to that, because there are some people who are chancers and they can also give you an expired thing and try to argue on that. So, guys, that is one of the things that we say. Make sure we even go to that stage like whereby, for instance, people go outside of the boardroom and go to the sun and say, I want to see if this is a real stamp and all that. That's how thorough people can be. So let's just make sure that we submit things that are valid so that you are able to move forward when it comes to that. At the end of the day, everything that you submit, we get audited, internal and external. So that is why we become thorough when we do the evaluation process. And then again, as well as when you submit your proposal, remember there could be projects whereby we are in Gauteng right now, but it's based in, because my experience is that I worked for institutions where they are provincial and all that, but most of the stuff are done in head office. So some people do want to come and submit stuff at head office, whereas the instruction said submit at that provincial office, because we're trying to ensure that we empower the locality part of it, the people that work at that province, and then it becomes easy for them to submit. But if there's a project whereby you're interested and you need to submit at the head office, say it's in Gauteng, and then you are based in Limpopo, you might not be able to drive or fly and come to Gauteng, and you decide to utilize the services of a courier services. Those people
Mm.
can mess you up if you are not careful as well. Yes, they are efficient how they work, but when it comes to tendering, make sure that you give them clear instruction. And those instructions will be along these lines. Like, for instance, you tell them exactly to say when you go and submit that tender at that department that you're targeting to submit the tender, tell the courier services to ensure that they add security with the tender box and deposit that tender into that box, because one, the security of officials as well as the receptionist are not allowed to keep those tender documents with them. You might submit via the courier on time, but at the time of closing, all the tenders get read from the tender box. If it's sitting, lying somewhere at a busy reception where they might not even be able to see or have an opportunity to deposit that for you, it's an automatic disqualification. I saw quite a lot of that, and people will argue and will produce those the video footages camera from the security personnel and all that, and then you are able to see that indeed it was not deposited, it went to reception, because at times it's not clearly marked. So the people who work there, they are busy. They might not have an opportunity to open, and then again, they are not also not allowed to can like open stuff, especially when it comes to tendering, because it will be viewed as tampering of the tender. Very important that you give them instructions so that you also have an opportunity that your tender document gets read. And then the other thing, it's the closing of a tender. I want you to be aware and also encourage, if you can, most of the time when you know you are submitting a tender and it's closing, let's say today 8/11. If you have an opportunity, just go and witness. There it is allowed. It's called the public viewing, so that you are able to see what is happening in there. So normally when you go there, when they open a tender, they'll announce those bidders and the pricing, those people that you compete with, unless it's a panel. Because remember, when it's a panel of, let's say, certain service providers, they don't usually put the pricing. You'll be in the panel and they will call you as and when they need the services, where they ask quotation, you compete amongst your other peers. The key thing is to look for a panel. For instance, if it's a panel of legal services, you wouldn't know whether you'll have a case, a certain case to require this type of legal services. It could be litigation and all that. So they wouldn't know that, but just to have an idea in terms of their rates. That's what they'll normally ask, their rates, but the actual work they wouldn't know. So please make sure that you pay attention on things like that as well. So when you go to the public view, you'll have an opportunity to know who you are competing with, and that info must also be on that institution's website as well as in the e-tender. So you are able to see that the whole thing is fair. And then you see when they say they close at 11, indeed it's 11 o'clock when it comes to that. Never ever send your tenders via email, fax, reception, security, like I said. It's an automatic disqualification, and late submission are not taken. 1 minute past 11, it's not 11 o'clock. You are out with a minute. It takes a lot for a minute for things to happen. So never underestimate the time.
Mm,
And
mm.
then the other thing, proposal gets rushed. Like I said, you'll miss crucial information. To include it, make sure that you create your own checklist as you prepare your documents. And also make sure that where they say they want original, you give them original. Where they say a certified copy, you give them a certified copy. The other thing, a sworn affidavit. I think mostly when it comes to those B certificate verification, for instance, there's a template that comes from the Department of Trade and Industry there. So some people, when they complete that, because you need to tick whether you be E level 1, 2, or 3, whatsoever, there's a certain part where it says dependent. So it's that person, you, the bidder, must sign that before the commissioner of oath can sign. You'll find instances where somebody, as the bidder or the dependent within that form, is not signing, but then expect the commissioner of oath to sign it and thinks that it's valid. It's not, because you need to give authorization for that commissioner to sign before you can do that. You can be thrown out on minor crucial stuff. Signatures are very important, because that commissioner of oath might turn around and say, no, I didn't sign on this thing and all that, but legally you need to make sure that you do that. Please follow those instructions. Those are minor because you deal with different committee members. Some they say, no, 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 we are not taking, where it says two witnesses on that sheet and it's only one, or there's no witness, we are not going to accept it because it's not fully completed.
Awesome.
So the best thing is
Awesome.
to make sure that you complete everything. Mm-hmm.
Mm. No, awesome, Pabi. Pabi, we need to go. I think we'll
Yeah.
catch up. I don't know if you're available next week. I've just got another meeting now. But thank you for this. I think it was very insightful.